Well, g'day internet and welcome to another editing session. I had a good day out yesterday capturing a few different photos as the weather rolled through, and I thought I would take you along again as we edit some of these images to see what we can pull out of it. Now, this first one was actually pretty cool. There's a good shelf cloud here. I did have to take it. I did shoot it a bit wide just so that I could capture everything, but I don't think I want to show all of that detail. So I believe we will be cropping in here. To start with, I'm going to play with the crop and see what that looks like. I'm going to come in quite tight initially, using the typical rule of thirds. I quite like the foreground. The upper clouds aren't really doing anything for me. So I'm just sort of cutting the edge of that shelf here and centralizing the knoll here. I think that's the way to do it. Yeah, that looks pretty good. We'll just crop that and have a look at that framing now. I think that's quite nice. I can work with that. It's highlighting a bit more of that rain detail through there as well. All right, so first up, I'm going to do a bit of a white balance check. I'll just pick the color picker tool here, find somewhere neutral gray. Let's try this roof. Gave a little bit of color adjustment to it. Yeah, shifted it just a little bit warmer. I like that. It's a bit more true to life. I'm going to work through my global adjustments to start with. If you look at the top left here, this is where I've got my histogram. We are a little bit underexposed. So I'll bring that exposure up about there just to even everything out. At the moment, I'm just evening everything out, not trying to make all this the one photo to start with. I'm not going to touch any of the selective tones. I'll do that with adjustments. I do like here in the tone curve though, there are some really cool defaults for different levels of contrast. And for this image, the light contrast gives an amazing pop, brings out some of this color, so it does add a little bit of saturation to it, but I find it's balancing the light really, really nicely. I'll have a look at what Clearview Plus does. This is basically your dehaze in DxO Photolabs. And I'm just doing this globally just to sort of see what it's going to do. Yeah, that needs to be a local adjustment. I might even just touch that in Nik rather than in here. Contrast, again, I'm going to do that locally. I'm not going to boost any of the colors or saturation yet. Again, probably with my global adjustments, I go really light on. I don't want to do a lot at this stage. I'm just balancing everything out. Right, I'm going to hit S to bring up my scope, my zoom basically, and I can see there is noise here. So a bit of deep prime 3, one click, and noise is gone. Absolutely perfectly clean. Lovely. I won't add any sharpening at this stage. All right, that is it for my main opening adjustments. Let's do a couple of local ones. Going to start with new adjustment here. I might just do a graduated filter. I just want to take some of the brightness out of the top part of this sky. We do something around there. And we'll just bring that exposure down a touch. Bring those highlights down a touch. But likewise, I am going to lift those shadows just a little bit. So I've actually flattened it, but what I've done is I've taken the heat out of the top part of that sky, which was drawing your eye and attention. I will do a vignette later to really block that out of the view. Foreground wise, let's do another local adjustment. And I might stay on the graduated filter and just drag it up, just touching the sky. So that's mainly most of the foreground. And I just want to see what contrast here does. A little bit of a boost micro contrast will add a little bit of sharpening pop. Has darkened down the shadows too much, so I am going to lift the shadows again. So the light was coming through onto the foreground, but the background was quite dark. And I think that that is just a nice balance. So you can see we've gone from the sky is very bright, the ground is quite dull, to now the sky's come down and the ground's got a nice bit of pop to it. All right, I like that. I like where we're at with that. Okay, so the next step, I think we're going to go over into Affinity Photo. So let's export to application. I'm going to use Affinity Photo 2 here and just export this out as a TIFF into Affinity. This will just take a moment. Okay, so here we are in Affinity Photo. My goal here really is to bring more out the detail in this shelf cloud. We'll probably touch on the colors and stuff a little bit as well. So straight away, I'm going to just hit Control J, Command J if you're on a Mac. Everything I do is on Windows, so just note the difference there and duplicate that. Let's go up to Filters, Plugins, Nik Collection 8 and into Nik 8 Color Effects. Probably my favorite touching up software available. I am going to use the tonal contrast filter to start with because this is going to help me bring that pop out into the cloud. I'm just going to reset these values to 0 and work on them individually. So highlights, I don't really want to use because what that is going to do is brighten the brightest areas only, which I don't really want to do. I want to keep them mid-tone. Mid-tones will definitely bring some more detail out in that cloud. Now, I'm not looking at foreground here. I'm looking at the sky only when I'm doing this adjustment because I'm going to select it shortly. So somewhere around there is bringing the contrast difference between the darks and the lights in that shelf. Now, if we do shadows, adding just a little bit more punch to it, I am going to lift the shadow slider just a bit as well because I want contrast, but I don't want it too dark. I want to keep some of that nice detail there. And I think I'll just check I'm just going to keep that on standard. And then using the polygon tool, I'm just going to click around really roughly, just selecting the sky area and join that back up. Now this adjustment only affects the sky, which is exactly how I wanted it. Let's load up a Pro Contrast and I will check the color cast correction. It's taking it way too magenta. I like the level of green in this. I'm not going to play with that. What does it do to the sky? It's sending it a weird magenta. All right, not going to do any color correction. I will do a bit of dynamic contrast. And that's just going to give a beautiful overall pop to this entire photo. Yep, like that a lot. We're nowhere near blowing out highlights here. It was quite a muted scene, so I shouldn't have anything super bright. Let's put a vignette on this using the darken, lighten center. I will change the shape to number 2. It's just my preferred shape for these type of scenes. I'm going to place the center just a touch higher. So you click this little button here, gives you a cross icon of where you want to put the center. I'm going to move it around there. So that's just shift the center up a little bit. Again, the focus here is the null and the shelf cloud. Foreground is just part of the scene. It's not the most significant part. We will brighten the middle just a touch. And we are darkening down the border, obviously. Might just increase the border size a little bit just to feather that off. And that's before the vignette. That's after the vignette. The central part is maintain the focus. Our eye is not wandering off the screen now. If anything, overall image probably needs a little bit more brightness. Let's bring up a levels and curve adjustment. And what do I want to do? Maybe just drag the midway up just a touch. Just brought that brightness back into it. Colors, we'll use the brilliance and warmth. This is where we'll add a bit of saturation. Doesn't need to be extreme. Got like 8 points of saturation there. Warmth. Just a little bit of warmth. There we go. Very subtle. Just makes those colours pop a bit nicer and keeps that sky from going too blue. All right, I really like that. We're going to hit apply. Take that back into Affinity. All right, now I think my next step, I'm going to duplicate the layer again and do a sharpening on this. Going to use Topaz Labs Sharpen AI. You can use Photo AI if you own it. If you don't, there are plenty of other sharpening options built into Affinity. I just love the results I get from this, so I've got it, I'll use it. Now I am going to be a bit selective here, just waiting for this to load up, give me its initial result. This is quite CPU intensive. All right, so that has really brought all the detail in. I'm going to select just the skyline and the landscape. So that won't do any sharpening to the clouds. And then I'm going to apply that and come back into Affinity, where I'm actually going to mask out that sharpening just on the horizon. As soon as that's come back in, I'll show you what I mean. Okay, that's run and we're back in Affinity. Now, what it does, if I can show here, is it's sharpened along the horizon quite significantly. And I don't want that to be necessarily sharp. I want the foreground and everything, all that detail sharp, but it's not realistic to have the distance, because as things go further and further away, they should get a little bit softer. So what I'm going to do is add a layer mask to this, hit B for my brush tool and make a black mask. I've just got it at 100% opacity, use the square brackets just to bring the size down a bit. And by painting black on a white mask, I'm just removing where that sharpening was, just across the sort of outer skyline. And that keeps that little bit of softness there. Just make sure it didn't hit any of that mountainside up there. Excellent. Yeah, that much more realistic. You just get that natural sharpness lens fall off. And that looks great. All right, now the last thing I think I want to do here is have a look and see what a little bit of an autumn glow does. So I'm going to hit Control-Alt-Shift-E to create a full duplicate layer, and then Control-J to copy that again. Now we want to add a Gaussian blur to this, so we're going to go Filters, Blur, Gaussian blur, and I'm going to play with the amount of pixels of blur just until I lose the difference between the fine detail. So I can still see bright, dark, but I can't see any fine detail anymore. And I'm going to apply that. Change the opacity of this level down to 12%. It's always my target. And then I'm going to add an adjustment layer, a brightness and contrast adjustment layer. I'm going to drag that onto the blur layer so it's only affecting that layer. So if you hit this little down arrow, it makes it visible. I'm going to increase the contrast and then increase the brightness a touch and turn this layer on and off. I'm just having a look at what it's doing to the overall light levels. It has gone too bright, so I'm going to bring that down, boost that contrast a bit. So there we go. So the overall light level hasn't changed too much, but it's added a little bit of a dreamy glow just into the highlight areas, and it's just a look I go for, and it's a look I love. All right, let's hit Control-Alt-Shift-E again to make a master layer of everything we've done. Gonna hold down the Shift key and click on the bottom layer to select everything. Right click and go merge selected. That gives me one final layer, which I can save and take back into DxO PhotoLab. All right, so here we are back in PhotoLab. I've hit Control 5 to make that one of my 5-star photos. If I go back across to the photo library, you can see I've got a 5-star project here. This is where I will grab this photo and drag it onto my 5-star project. And that's where I keep all of my final images. So if I ever want to just find one of my finished images, I can click on that project and they'll all be here in date order in a nice simple location for me to find, which is pretty cool. Anyway, let's get back to this one. I'm going to stack it with the original RAW file. So select the NTIFF, select the RAW, right click and stacking and create stack. All right, so that's that one. Now we want to edit another one here. I did actually edit this yesterday, but I'm going to take you through the process again because this was a really cool edit. I had a lot of fun with this. So this started off as quite a dark exposure. It was 8 o'clock at night. This is an 8-second shot and you can still see quite underexposed. What I will do initially is my normal walkthrough, but we are going to do a lot more editing inside of PhotoLabs for this one. To start with, we are definitely going to have to increase this exposure. I'm not trying to make it daylight, but I do want to bring up enough of the detail that I can see what's going on. I'm going to bring the highlights down a touch. Again, I want to keep them under control, so recovering them even at this point can be helpful. Shadows, I am going to lift a little bit. I'm mainly just thinking about this tree line and the mountain in the background here, just to retain a little bit of detail there, even though this was at night. From here, I will do, again, I love this light contrast tone curve preset. It's darkened it down, but it gives it such good pop. So now I can actually bring that exposure back up again. And it's just brought some amazing detail into the core of this storm. So this is the storm front. That's the gust front that was heading left to right here in the scene. And it just looked awesome. Now I can straight away tell that this photo is not straight. So we do need to fix that up. What I'm going to do is select the horizon tool up here, drag one side to the horizon on the left, one side to the horizon on the right, and hit apply. So that has now straightened my image. I do need to give it then a slight crop. I was going to crop this anyway. I'm going to really focus down onto this core, somewhere around there. Bring that up just a touch. So I'm going to bring it across a bit more. I really want to centralize that wonderful cloud structure. So there we go. All right, that is looking amazing. Now there are some really bright lights and stuff here. It is Christmas time. There's a Christmas tree or something over there. That's fine. I'm not too concerned about those. I will do a denoise, however. So if I scroll down and hit Deep Prime 3, because as I zoomed in before, I could see I had noise. Understandable when you're shooting at ISO 408 seconds, but that will clean it up beautifully. Okay, next step. I love the color. I'm not even going to try and change the color. I am going to do a little bit of a local adjustment. Actually, no, I do want to just play with the contrast details here. So let's see what a bit of clear view, this is again the dehaze, does to this image. Yeah, that makes it really pop. I'm actually going to use that globally on this photo because I like what it's doing to both the ground and the sky. Now, contrast, we want to add a bit more of that as well. So a little bit of global contrast, micro contrast, really bringing some pop into that cloud. And the fine contrast is, I'm only using very small amounts of these, but it's bringing some really nice detail into the ground as well as that cloud. That's very cool. I like that. I think we want to hop over to the FX tab and put a bit of a vignette on this. So I'm just going to hit Creative Vignette and I'm going to reduce the intensity, which again, I'm just looking at the borders because we just want to really make the hero of this shot the cloud. And just playing with the midpoint. So that's before, that's after. It has darkened those edges quite a bit. I don't mind that. The horizon line is getting a touch dark. So globally, I'll bring those shadows up a little bit more. Yeah, I like that. It's such a cool looking cloud. And that's pretty much it for this photo. I could take it in Nik, I could do further to it, but I kind of like the results that I'm getting just straight out of PhotoLab for this one. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I will have the video of this chase up on my channel as well, so please go check that out. And if you're interested in buying some of the DxO software, maybe PhotoLabs 9 for using it for your raw processing like I am, or the Nik Collection for the final finishing touches to your photos, I have a 15% off discount code. If you use Murray Fox in the DxO store, they will give you 15% off any new licenses. And if you order 2, currently as a Christmas special, you will get 20% off, which is an absolute awesome deal. There is a link to the store in the description below. I thank DxO very much for their support in offering me the code to share with you. I hope you really enjoyed this. Love to hear your thoughts. Which was your favorite photo? Comment down below, let me know. Please like this video, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of my content, and until next time, stay safe.